mice or something.
Cats. Pakistani cats. Hurry fed.
Evening, Tom.
I got it.
It's freezing in here.
Coldest June for 150 years.
Everything nowadays seems to be the coldest, the wettest, the driest. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Gavin.
Hello, Brian.
Evening, Tom.
Evening, all.
Oh, hello, Sean.
Oh, Sean.
Evening, Sean.
Evening, everybody.
Hello, Tom.
Is Mavis still there?
Yeah.
Hello, Adela. Hello, Mavis. Would you believe it? They hadn't any milk.
Oh, no.
Had to go all the way to that darkie's place.
Oh, it's a good little shop. He's open till 10 at night and weekends.
Oh, they'll work. I'll say that for them. Filthy they leave things in here. Who was it last?
Girl Guides.
They should bloody well know better.
Hello.
Good girl. Good girl. Sorry.
Hello, Denis.
Gavin.
How are you tonight?
All right, and you?
Good, good.
Good girl. Sit. Good girl. Sit. Sorry. Have you got some light, please? Yeah, sure. Keep those. Thanks. My heels always come off too.
I'm Sean. I'm Bob.
Evening.
Hello.
Hello, Della. Hello. Hello, How's Suki? She's the one I
Little love.
Yes, she is. Tea, thanks. Sugar's on the piano. Tea or coffee?
Oh, coffee, please. How much is it?
Whatever you like, dear.
Take it, Dill.
Here I are.
First time.
What?
Yeah.
I'm Tom.
I'm Yvonne.
Right. There you are.
Oh, Sal.
Hello, Tom.
How's it going?
What do you want now?
It's tough.
Take it easy.
There you are. And that's for me. Whatever you like.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, Enid. How is it?
It's good to be here.
Oh, that's why we're here.
Coffee? You like? There you are. Do you want sugar?
Oh, what sort of day did you have, Brian?
Not so good.
Well, it gets better.
Does it?
Oh, it really does.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Hold it. Hang on. Put it in there.
First time.
First time with this group. I've been shopping around.
We're glad to have you. I'm Tom.
Bob.
Mavis? Done. Bob.
Oh, hello.
Oh, I see you're a reader. Have you looked at any of our literature?
Yes, some of it.
Oh, well, if you want any, Gavin will flog it to you.
Gavin, this is Frank.
Hi, Frank. Glad you're here. Glad to be here, Gavin.
Shall we have a coffee?
Yeah, thanks.
Ron, this is Frank, our speaker for tonight.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
Hello, Ronald. Tom. Frank.
Hi, Tom. Nice to be here.
Della, Mavis, this is Frank.
Hello,
Hi,
Della.
Frank.
Mavis. Nice to meet you.
Things to discuss before we begin. Grab Ronald if you can, will you?
No, it's true. And that wasn't all. When I got back to my lodgings, they'd locked me out. So I climbed in through the kitchen window. And begot Sean, says I to myself, you were never as drunk as this before. For the whole room was moving past me, and I was going up and down like a boat in a gale. You know what I done? I climbed in through the window and into the baby's perambulator.
Yes, all right, Ron.
Ah, right. Three things we've had a 12-step call from Grove Gardens. A man. He's all up for an hour or two. Can you handle that, Gavin? Yep. Yeah, it's not too far. We've had another call, but that was an emergency. Philip's coping with that from central office. Now, do we want to send a delegate to the convention?
You want an airline ticket these days, you've got to shop around. You know, there are people on the same plane, and some of them have paid half what the others have.
I get the reduction for students.
Oh, well, you're okay then. I wish I did.
Frank?
Oh.
Brian, fix the door, would you?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Sit. Good girl. Sit. That's it.
We'll begin as usual with a few moments' silence, just to remember why we're all here. My name's Tom, and I'm an alcoholic. I'll ask Della to read the preamble.
Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied to any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Thank you, Della. Now I'll ask Gavin to remind us of the 12 suggested steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the words of our founders, the first 100 members, in Chapter 5 of the Big Book.
Remember that we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except where to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you, Gavin. Well, I'd like to begin by saying that I see one or two new faces here tonight, and I'm sure we all extend them a warm welcome. For their benefit, perhaps I should explain that this is an open meeting. So we have with us some of the people from what we always call upstairs. That is to say, the room where Al-Anon meets. That is the group for husbands or wives or children or any other relatives of alcoholics. Somebody once said to me, the fun of open meetings is that you don't know who's an alcoholic and who isn't. Spot the alcoholic. Our speaker for tonight is from Houston, Texas. Some of you will have heard him before, but in the 5 years I've known him, I've never heard him repeat himself.
Well, thank you, Tom. My name is Frank, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to say how very glad I am to be here tonight. I traveled quite a lot in the course of my job, and I meet a lot of other people doing the same kind of work. We stay in the same hotels. And when the day's work's done, whether it's London, New York, Brussels, Frankfurt, Tehran, we always seem to meet up in the same bars. Now, people say to me, you lead a romantic kind of life. They think it's one big airline ad. And I say to them, can you imagine, would you believe the loneliness? Those guys sitting along the bar in that swanky hotel, you know, some of them are the loneliest people I've ever met, and I've traveled. They're always looking at their watches, trying to work out the right time to call their wives. And when it is the right time to call their wives, as likely as not, they're too far gone in alcohol to make any sense. Or they're out on the town trying to make sense in some other bar or some club with hostesses or some other place that's always just around the corner. Now, these traveling salesmen, and that's all we really are, even if we're staying in the Dorchester or the Savoy. Well, that's what my esteemed colleagues are mostly doing tonight. Now, some of them may be social drinkers. We don't want to stop the social drinker enjoying himself. We just want to try and help the alcoholic to stop killing himself. And what is an alcoholic? What are we? We suffer from a disease. It's progressive, and there is no cure. Now, it's only 11 years since I joined AA, and why, I'll tell you later. But I can't tell you right now how glad I am not to be boring the pants off some barman. You know, how glad I am that no matter where I am in the world, I've got my little address book, and I can always find myself among friends, real friends. Not just bar friends, but real friends at a local group of AA. Well, now, compared to the Dorchester or the Savoy, you'll forgive me, Tom, this room would seem to lack a little ambiance. Right? But now, already tonight, and I've only met these two fellows before, Ronald, when he visited our group in Houston, I can already sense that feeling of friendship, that warmth that comes between members of AA, because we're sharing. We're sharing a common problem, alcohol. Now, I say friends. Of course we're friends. We've become friends because we've resolved to work on this problem together. And sometimes, in these places far from home and on those black days that we all know so well, at a meeting of AA, I have felt not only friendship, I have felt that these men and women in this rented room are my brothers and my sisters.
Doesn't know what he's bloody talking about. Dorchester is a very pretty town in Dorset. Excuse me.
I was saying, when did I...
Bloody liars don't know a thing. Oh, where the damn lights are.
We've all sneaked drinks because we wanted to be 3 or 4 ahead of the rest of the party. And when we got to the party, what did we do? We took a drink and put it behind the record player, and then we took another drink and put it in the bathroom. Then we took a third drink. That was for drinking. The others are just reserved. We've all kept a half bottle in the car and told our host that we needed to go out and check that tire that seemed to be a little low.
Frankie has only got one ball. The other's in the Leedstone Hall. His mother has got the other. My Frankie has no balls at all.
But it was when I started hiding liquor that I knew I was in trouble. No, the hotel bar wasn't enough. The room service wasn't enough with all that telephoning and tipping. So I started keeping a bottle in the closet. Now, hiding bottles, we all do it. But it's not the bottles. It's who are we hiding them from? Colleagues in the office? Yes. That handy filing cabinet drawer. Oh, and we're up to all the tricks, too. Square bottles. They don't roll around when you open a drawer. Now, a friend of mine, as a matter of fact, I sponsored him. He rigged a kind of block and tackle and kept a case of bourbon up the chimney. It worked fine all summer until we had a blizzard in September and his wife lit a fire. The insurance boys are still trying to figure that one out. Frankie said, do I stand trial on a charge of arson or admit to my attorney and my wife that I'm an alcoholic? No, seriously, he meant it. He found it so difficult to make that simple admission that every member of AA makes before he says anything. My name is so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. Okay, so I was lying to my friends, lying to my wife, lying to my children. I was even lying to myself. And what got me out of this goddamn mess?
I'm sorry. I must... Is this a bad moment?
It depends on you.
I must have help. I've been going to your group in Norwich. Just moved to London. They gave me the list of addresses, and yours was the nearest. Can't drive, of course. Lost my license and had to walk. Got the heebie-jeebies crossing the road and fell over the what do you call it? Thing in the middle. Island. I see. Thing is, my wife's just left me.
Are you here because your wife's just left you, or because you want to give up drinking? Carry on, Frank.
Oh, as I was saying, what got me out of this mess that I got myself into? You know, I think most alcoholics have got to go right down to the bottom before they can even think about picking themselves up again. Well, I went right to the bottom. Started off by losing my job. Then my wife left me, took the children with her. I was alone. No need to hide the bottles now. They stood out on the carpet for anybody to see. And that's when I came to believe in a divine providence, because the first person to see them was the guy who came to value the house for the divorce. He went all around the house, did his job. He came back into the lounge and he looked at me. I was in a pretty bad way. I hadn't shaved or changed my clothes for a week. And he said, ever try AA? And I said, that bunch of nuts, get the hell out of here. He said, okay, but look, I'll leave this list of meetings just in case you feel that you'd like to talk to somebody. And there's a telephone number on the back. We run a 24-hour service in this town. Well, I didn't take it. He left it on the settee. 3 days later, I had drunk myself into a condition that some of us know only too well. I couldn't eat. The booze no longer put me to sleep. I just lay in the bed in my own vomit and excreta. There was nobody to clean the sheets, although by that time you'd have needed to change the bed. I didn't even have the will left to wash my filthy, shitty hands. Well, I got downstairs to sleep or pass out on the settee, and I saw that pamphlet. I don't know how I did it, but I dialed that 24-hour number. They were there in 30 minutes, 2 members of AA. One of them was my bank manager. Divine providence? Maybe it was just coincidence that that guy left that pamphlet there. Maybe it was just coincidence that I found it. But that event made it easier for me, an agnostic, no churchgoer, to accept the second and third steps in the program. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. God as we understand him. That was a very funny story. I think Ronald's heard it. About the 3 alcoholics that arrive at the pearly gates. One of them took the thing.
Sorry.
Oh, your turn for the bog. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I need to pull the chain. I haven't done anything. Oh, well, I couldn't, could I? Still got my trousers on. Well, it's all yours, all right?
I can't stand it.
Oh, stand what?
When they get to the goblet.
Oh, I don't blame you. Oh, I mean, God's all right on church parade with a bit of brass and some drums to back him up. When that lot trot him out like the regimental goats.
I think you forgot.
Well, I'm afraid I can't offer you one. No. A bit short, you understand. Well, it's all right. It's awfully nice meeting someone of one's own sort at one of these things. Tell straight away, you know. It's a pity we couldn't sit down and have a talk. We have to shout over the top. Yeah. Oh, how very kind. Well, shall we return to the auditorium? Watch the rest of the performance? Oh, got the runs, old chap. Promise all of us.
Two things got me where I am tonight and made me who I am tonight. My submission to the will of that higher power and the help and the friendship of my brothers and sisters in AA.
Thank you for sharing, Frank. I'm sure that we've all been very impressed with a great deal that Frank has told us, and some of us will have identified with some of his stories. Now the meeting's open for anyone to speak. In AA, we're never afraid of long silences.
Thank you, Frank. I'm Della and I'm an alcoholic. I was interested in what you said about the moment one knows one's an alcoholic. I mean, when one really knows inside, and the time it takes really to admit it. I mean, I suppose like a lot of other people, I thought that drunks fell down, that they were sick on the pavement, you know, that sort of thing. Well, I've never done that yet. But I ruined a marriage. I lost my kids. My family wouldn't see me. I was nearly put inside for persistent shoplifting. I would have been if I hadn't found AA. I could never keep a decent job because I was always drunk when I got there. I was drunk at lunchtime, and I got so drunk on the way home that I couldn't remember the things I had to do the next day. I got short of money for the drink, so I started to put my hand in the till. Well, only borrowing, of course. I'll put it back on Friday, and I did put it back every Friday, until the Friday came when I couldn't. Yeah, well, that's another story. Yeah, I was quite something to look at then. I got whistles in the street. There's nothing like alcohol for ruining a woman's looks and her figure. I won't say, I mean, I never took money for it. I mean, just presents, you know, but I started going with men. Men who'd buy me drink. And the men who'd buy me drink were mostly drinkers. Oh, I fancied myself in love with one of them. And he thought he was in love with me. It wasn't until I found AA and got sober and started to think straight that I realised we weren't in love with each other. We were both in love with the booze. One of them took me to Mallorca. I got so drunk that I was no good to him. He left me there. He left me on that bloody island. Yeah. I missed the charter flight. I spent my last pesetas in the airport bar. Yeah, I think I must have broke something. One of them big glass cases, you know, with souvenirs. When I came to, I was in a cell. Me and a Spanish Nick with no one, with nothing. And you know, I still couldn't realise that I was an alcoholic. I thought it was them there was something wrong with. My husband, my kids, always whining, always quarrelling. My family, those rotten men I used to go with. There was nothing wrong with Della. Oh, no. It was the British consul in Mallorca who said it. Well, not him, you know. Probably some assistant when he came to get me out of the nick. Madam, he said, I think you need help. He was so British and public school, he was. Madam, I think you need help. I'd never seen myself as someone who needed help before. I started to cry. Who'd help me, I said. And he said, isn't there something called AA? And I said, the AA? I haven't even got a car. I'm sorry if this is a bit of a ramble, but You see, it ties up in a way with what Frank said. I mean, there I was in this mess, in this real mess, and I still couldn't realise that the mess was alcohol.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Del. Anyone else?
Oh, if I can come in again. Now, Della's story to me is illustrative of the surrealist world that we alcoholics live in. I met a Jesuit priest at a meeting once, and he was so worried about his drinking that he went to his superior. It turned out the superior was an alcoholic as well. A ship's captain I knew was so far gone that one night in Baltimore he couldn't find his ship. So he went up to a cop, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm lost. I can't find my command." And the cop said, "Color and license number?" And he said, "Well, she's black and white. She hasn't got a license number, but she's 597 feet long and full of bananas." End of a fine career.
I'd like to ask something. I'm not at all sure whether I'm an alcoholic or not. Sorry, my name's Bob. And I've been going to meetings all over London just to see... Well, I don't know what I wanted to see. Alcoholics, I suppose, to see if I was anything like them. And at all these meetings, one thing struck me. No one ever asks, why am I an alcoholic?
Oh, well. Gavin, would you like to come in on this one?
You can spend 10 years asking yourself, why do I drink? Meanwhile, you can drink yourself to death. You know, a lot of us here have got experience in hospital of group therapy, all that. I was in an alcoholic unit. The first thing they asked us to do was write our autobiographies. You know, I went to a psychiatrist once, privately, for 9 months. My parents paid for it. And we went into my relationships with my brothers and sisters, my father and mother, whether I was breastfed, whether I was oral or anal. The one thing he never said to me was, stop drinking now. If you stop drinking, you might find out why you drink. Finding out why you drink will never stop you drinking.
I'd like to say something to Bob, if I may. You know, you can intellectualize from now till the day of judgment, but one day you've got to have the guts to put down that glass, and that's not easy. I've had the DTs, shivers and sweats and shakes, all the withdrawal symptoms, and if a drunk is going to give up drink, he's got all that in front of him, whether he knows why he drinks or not.
Bob's come here tonight, and he says he doesn't know whether he's an alcoholic or not. Well, if he's here, something must be bothering him.
Now, I'd like to ask Bob, have you ever, through your drinking, made a loved one cry?
I don't have many loved ones.
Alcoholics seldom do.
You never talk about anything except the sagas of your drinking and the moral lessons of your conversions. At all the meetings I've been to, I've been repelled by the way you compete. You boast of your degradation because the farther you sank, the more self-satisfied you can be because you've made it, you've reformed. You never talk about the state of our society. In traditional societies, in Africa, for instance, I'm doing anthropology, so I know a bit about it. The drinking's often confined to certain festivals. The drink's homemade, and it fulfills a social function. Then the white man comes along and sells drink in tins and bottles, and they start to drink all the year round. And instead of the occasional therapeutic orgy, you get alcoholism. Look at our society. Some of the worst drinking is amongst the immigrant Irish labourers. We use them so long as we need them. We put them up in bloody awful hostels or leave them to find accommodation in the ghettos. And then we raise our hands in horror because they drink. Well, what else have they got to do but drink? I don't see many of them here tonight. West Indians, they have a drink problem too.
Come off it, young man, whatever your name is. The Irish would drink anywhere. Put them in paradise, they'd be making poaching out the back.
Yes, but why? I'm not just asking why certain individuals drink more than others, but whole societies. The Finns, for instance, the American Indians.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Bob, you know, but a little fellow with a beard, a guy called Lenin, seriously believed that when the Russian Revolution changed society, alcoholism would decrease. Well, I've been to the Soviet Union several times on business, and believe me, AA could do a great job there.
I'd like to pick Bob up on one thing he said. He spoke about people being driven to drink. No one has ever been driven to drink. No one has ever driven anyone else to drink. We drink because we have a disease called alcoholism. We become sober because we choose sobriety.
No one has ever driven anyone else to drink. I have been driven to drink by an alcoholic.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but you're from upstairs. Members of Al-Anon, spouses and relatives of alcoholics, don't usually speak at open meetings.
Give me.
I'm Sally, and I'm an alcoholic. I identified very much with what Frank said about the bottles. The shame of those bottles. I live in a flat with 4 other girls. They're all social drinkers. They have a bit too much now and then, but I'm the only alcoholic, so far. Getting the bottles in? Well, I get one of those plastic bags from the supermarket, and I cover the booze with ridiculous things I never eat, like cabbages. Getting the empties out, I have this big briefcase.
Haven't we all done it?
Before I bought my last briefcase, I measured it against a bottle of my favorite brand. I remember the dimensions now, 11 3/4 inches.
All the other girls think I must be so important. I carry around so many papers. I know every rubbish bin between the flat and the office. Squares and gardens are best. They always have one. It's more private than the street. No one to hear that awful clonk.
You really do all that too? Oh, I'm sorry, I should say. My name's Yvonne, and I'm an alcoholic. Everyone thinks I'm having this swinging time. I suppose it's the way I look, the way I've learned to look. Well, I come back from these parties to my room. It's 12 feet by 9. Oh, I know that because I just bought a carpet. 12 feet by 9. That's just big enough for me and my bottle.
I don't want you to think... I mean, I am trying. I'm on the program. I think that's one of the best things in AA, the program. One day at a time. Try one day at a time without drinking. Don't say I'm giving up drinking. Don't project. Just concentrate on one day at a time. And think the first drink. That's good, too. It's that first drink that does it. What's the other one? Oh, yes. We're all one drink from a drunk. My last drink was 8 o'clock yesterday morning. I'm sorry. That's not very good, is it?
I'd like to expand on something Sally just said. You know, it doesn't matter how long we've been sober. One drink can lead to disaster. It's that first drink we must not take. Now, I knew a man who was a member of AA for 22 years and never had a drink in all that time. And one day, his daughter, she was a very beautiful girl, was killed in a car crash. He had to go to the morgue to identify the body. They opened the refrigerator drawer, and he got himself ready to look. He looked. It wasn't his daughter, it was an old man. It was a slight error on the part of the attendant. Well, they opened 2 more drawers before they found her. Her face was a pulp. The police offered him a lift home, and he said, "No, I'd rather be alone. I want to walk." And he walked. He passed a bar. He passed it. Then he forgot everything he'd ever learned in AA, everything he'd ever tried to impress upon people he was sponsoring. He turned around, went back into that bar. Just one quick one, he thought. Well, he was drunk for his daughter's funeral. He was drunk for 9 months. He died of alcohol a year later in St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington. Now, that man was an abstinent alcoholic and a member of AA for 22 years. You know, when we have a lapse, we call it a slip. Boy, that's a slip that can lead to a long, long slide.
Talking of the program, I was sleeping in the park last night, and the park police picked me up and I was taken inside. I was searched as usual in front of the sergeant, and they looked in my wallet. Nothing much in it, of course, except this. And the sergeant says to me, "Are you a member of AA?" "I am," I says. "Well, says he, you better get back on the program." I couldn't help thinking he must know something about it.
My name's Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. In this group, well, and at other meetings I've been to, it seems a sort of policy to knock psychiatrists. Well, I've been in hospital quite a lot, and I've found they help me. They put me in touch with reading, Freud and all that, and well, I found a new explanation of myself. It helped me.
Brian, there's no bias against psychiatrists or any other professionals in AA. I mean, you read our literature. If you feel there's a bias here, it's the fault of the group, not of AA.
Yeah, okay, but well, if I'm honest with myself, I come to meetings not because I agree with what you say, but, well, to keep myself from going to the pub. I mean, someone talked about AA becoming a way of life. That really terrifies me, because well, it's becoming that for me. I go every night of the week. I think you can even go on Christmas Day. I mean, tonight, for instance. Just look at the choice. Tonight, there are meetings, just tonight, a Monday. At Acton, Camden Town, Chelsea, Croydon, Ealing, East Ham, Epsom, Golders Green, Hackney, Lambeth, Harrow, Streatham, Sydenham, Tottenham, Victoria, Wimbledon, Woolwich. Oh, and there's a gay AA meeting at NW1 at 8 p.m. and look, 2 lunchtime meetings too. Christ, one can live in AA.
Try it.
You could die in that pub you're running away from, Brian.
I'm glad to be here tonight. Where would I be if I wasn't here? Like a lot of people, I'd be alone. I've been around. Believe me, there are worse places to live in than AA. Yeah, I'm glad I'm an alcoholic. It brought me... you lot.
Well, the higher power may help you to give up drink, but why the hell can't you stop most of you from chain smoking? I'm sorry. I'm allergic to tobacco fumes. Can we open something?
We usually do, halfway through.
He was talking about psychiatrists. What about doctors? Well, you go to your GP with what I think they now call the presenting symptoms. That should give them a clue, but it bloody doesn't. You present this cretin with heart palpitations, diarrhea, migraine, nausea, catarrh, gastritis. God, I've presented the lot. You breathe booze at him across the desk, but he still doesn't ask, how much do you drink? Well, what do they teach him in medical schools? That seems a bit funny me coming like this. I've had a few today, I don't deny it. Here I am, putting the world to rights.
Alcoholics are great people for doing just that.
Yeah.
You're talking of psychiatrists. As Tom told you, I've been living in Houston, Texas. You may have seen on television one of our most prestigious institutions, Mission Control for the space program. You know, before we sent men to the moon, we screened them with the most sophisticated psychological tests ever devised. Those astronauts were supposed to be the most mature, the most integrated men in the entire United States. And now who's come out and admitted that he's an alcoholic? Buzz Aldrin. Trust a psychiatrist to send a drunk to the moon.
My name's Enid, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Frank for his talk, which I found very interesting. I was glad that he reminded us that alcoholism is a disease. I believe it's recognized as a disease now by the World Health Organization and the British Medical Association. I was so relieved when I was first told in AA that I was suffering from an illness. And it took away so much guilt. Never thought I'd be glad to be told that I was ill, but I was. I was grateful to Frank for speaking so openly about the physical things that go with drinking. I've looked after my father for 15 years. He's an alcoholic. Whether his drinking drove me to drink, I can't say. I have to take responsibility for that, don't I? But people who haven't looked after an alcoholic, And he's senile now, as well as permanently drunk. Not too senile to get down to the nearest off-licence. But they can't imagine what it's like. You see, he's had a colostomy. So he has a plastic bag here for his bowels. Of course, he can't manage it, so I have to, as best I can. Well, they've made a lot of improvements, but just try fixing that thing to someone with a bottle and a half of whiskey inside him. Especially when you're drunk, too. I have been sober for nearly 4 weeks now, but I sometimes think, when people talk about their problems, their depressions, but it's the physical horrors of life that sometimes get me down. I come here quite neat and tidy. I sometimes wonder if anybody knows what I go back to. What I'll go back to tonight. But I can go back. Because I've been here. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am not an alcoholic. I come from upstairs, Al-Anon, and there is something I must say or I will burst. At all the meetings I've been to, here and in other groups, there is one thing that is never mentioned. Sex. Sex in relation to alcohol.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth. There are no rules in AA, but in this group at open meetings, we do prefer it if people from upstairs don't speak. Now, look, why don't you raise this at Al-Anon?
Do you think I haven't tried? Perhaps it's because there are men and women there, but they all clam up. It makes me think sometimes that sex is the key to the whole business, and you won't admit it. Especially you men won't admit it.
After the meeting, some of us go to the Wimpy round the corner. I'm sure, Elizabeth, you would have an attentive audience.
Oh, bloody hell.
Anyone else like to come in?
This is the first time we've really got down to it.
I'd like to hear the lady against the chair.
I think she should be allowed to speak.
Give her a chance. Anyone else like to take the chair?
What to do, I'm making our time. But, you know, we sit upstairs, we non-drinkers, or social drinkers, and we talk about what it's like to live with an alcoholic, how to deal with an alcoholic. Don't nag, don't empty bottles down the sink, accept. It's his or her problem, not ours. Then, at 9 or 10 o'clock, we go home to our alcoholic. And what is the first thing we are faced with? The thing we never talk about. Bed. I speak as a woman. Perhaps a man can speak later. You get into bed, and you don't know, even after all this time, you never know just how drunk he is. Oh, you've got used to the smell on his breath. You can even get to love it. It's him. Sometimes I think we women are such idiots, we could get to love anything. So, it begins. This act that was once so natural, so beautiful. But now you are thinking, can he make it? What will happen? Will he lose it? And so you don't become ready yourself because you are so busy with him. Perhaps he forgets all about it and goes to sleep. Sometimes you want to say, no, you can't make it. Leave it till the morning. But he wants to go on to prove himself. You let him come in, and now begins hell. You can't respond to him because you're not sure of him. But if you don't respond, even drunk, he will know. You can fake, do the things he likes, lie, and feel in yourself absolutely nothing. If it goes right for him, if he can perform, I always think that's such a funny English word for it, perform. I mean, if he can manage, then it has been no pleasure for you. But if he fails, then God help you next day. Because if he remembers his failure, he will find some way of taking it out on you. And then he will need more booze to get back his male pride. I must seem to you just a neurotic woman going through the menopause. But I need help as much as anyone here. You don't have the monopoly of suffering, you alcoholics, as you sometimes seem to think. My friends say, forget him, go off and have an affair. I wouldn't know how to respond to a man anymore. Now he is completely impotent. Oh, it's simpler, really. We've given up trying, made an uneasy sort of peace. When we do the dishes, we walk round each other in circles so as not to touch. When he's sober, I try to talk about our love life. And the minute I start, he gets up for a drink. Somebody here has said, no one can drive anyone else to drink. He has driven me. Half a bottle. But I can't drink. So I am sick. I think in your big book it is called revenge drinking. I try everything. I make love to myself to keep my body quiet. I suppose I'm too old or not emancipated enough to do it without guilt. But then I think, I know women whose husbands don't drink at all, and they seem to have most of the same problem. So, is it the drink? Is it him? Is it me?
Changed my mind. Went to the wrong place.
So?
Approximately. I'm sorry. I'm Elizabeth's husband. Am I allowed in? I've been meaning to come for quite a time.
We're glad to have you here.
This male pride thing. Well, I went to sea for a couple of years, just as a steward, you know, to see the world. Well, you get to a port and all the lads had been reading girly magazines all the way and they were all full of what they were going to do when they got ashore. And you go ashore and they start drinking, getting up courage for these great things they were going to do with the girls. And when they were all pissed up to the eyeballs, it wasn't they who moved in, it was the whores. And you'd see your mates coming back to the ship, incapable. Well, they'd sleep it off, and then the stories would begin, and the boasting. Oh, I used to think that they were too drunk to get pleasure themselves, let alone give anybody else any. Well, what I mean is, Elizabeth talked about some connection between alcohol and sex. Well, I think there is one. And I think it's a pity you don't talk about it.
Well, it's not the same for a man, is it? Well, not quite. I mean, there was this man I mentioned, you know, who took me to Mallorca. Well, he left me because, well, I just lay there like a sack. What he wanted, I think... Oh, it wasn't love or acrobatics, it was... He wanted me to tell him how wonderful he was, what a great lover he was, and give a great round of applause every time he did it. And I just snored.
I think perhaps most of us would prefer to discuss intimate things like this with a sponsor or a professional.
Are you all right?
I've been asked that question since I was 3. Are you all right?
What do you think of them?
I met a man at another meeting. He told me he'd been in the fellowship for 26 years. 26 years, I think. God, in 26 years, I could still be coming to these crummy rooms just to keep myself sober for the next 24 hours. I think sometimes, God, is it bloody worth it? Isn't it better to die of the stuff?
It's a slow death. That can take 26 years, too. Do you have a sex problem?
Yes.
That may be why we drink.
Didn't you come out to go in there?
No, I came out to talk to you.
Some of the others go to the Wimpy afterwards.
Let's go somewhere else.
Pub.
When did you have your last drink?
Yesterday morning before I went to work.
Mine was closing time Thursday. I've done 4 days.
One day at a time.
God, I loathe them. I hate their smugness. Their vapid sort of religion. I hate all this Christian name stuff the minute you meet. I despise their confessions, the way they compete, the dreadful language their awful little leaflets are written in, their American heartiness and chumminess, their ghastly slogans, all this shaking hands.
But
I think they know about drink. I don't think they know anything else, but I think they know about drink. Because they're all drinkers. Or have been. And some of the stories they tell about their drinking scare the living daylights out of me. I mean, I'm not sick on the carpet and I don't fall downstairs.
Yet?
Yet. But I've just realized what they mean by a blackout. A memory loss. I'm starting to have them. I use a bike. I've lost it. I've no recollection of when or where I last used it.
Can you accept their first step? That you're powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable?
Bloody easily.
That's just about where I am.
A surprising number of alcoholics come from religious backgrounds. I didn't. My father was a devout atheist and a socialist. The house was full of books against God and against the church, and copies of a little magazine that devoted its time to the abolition of the deity. So it didn't come easy to me, this acceptance of a higher power. But as I explained to so many people I was sponsoring who had the same difficulty, your higher power needn't be God on a cloud. It could be some place you like to sit. You don't know why. It could be the way you feel when you hear a favorite bit of music. Or your little daughter's face when she holds up her arms and says, "Good night, Daddy." I'm sorry, just to remind you, I lost my family through drink. My daughter's 30 now. Now that I'm sober, we've become friends again. But I lost those days. I lost them. And they don't come again. You know, you see people at their first AA meeting, prosperous people, perhaps, accustomed to the best. They look at the places where we meet, and you can see them thinking, what am I doing here? The stacking chairs and the plastic cups and sometimes the paint peeling off the walls. Well, I owe my life to these rooms.
I'm sorry, I came in the middle of what you were saying. But you were talking about this higher being thing. I have a genuine difficulty over that. You see, I'm a Marxist.
I'm a Marxist, too. You seem surprised. Perhaps you'd be even more surprised if I told you I was a hippie. Oh, I'd hair down to here, beard, beads, the lot. Reacting against the drink culture of our parents, we took to drugs. The road to Kathmandu, been there. A lot of us died, you know. There should be a memorial to those that died for the cause. Except that now most of us really can't remember quite what the cause was. I got off drugs, and like a lot of people that do, I took to drink. My father, in his ignorance, was relieved. He'd rather I was a piss artist than a junkie. I won't say I was a Marxist, because I still am over most things, but Christians, Jews, members of most religions have a remarkable ability to accommodate, absorb heresies, big and little irregularities that seem to conflict with their basic beliefs. Like an old Jewish gentleman using the oven clock so he can have hot soup on the Sabbath. Or a Christian who privately doesn't believe in the virgin birth or the divinity of Christ. Well, I've found that as a Marxist, I can just about accommodate some sort of idea of a God. Just about.
You all seem to be something. I'm nothing. Perhaps I drink because I am nothing. I was on a drugs charge once. And you know what the magistrate called me? He said, "You're just a clothes horse." You know, a clothes horse. You open and shut it. And there's nothing there. Just plastic wire, air, nothing. Nothing without clothes.
I saw a good slogan at a meeting somewhere once. Love yourself. God doesn't make junk.
Anyone else like to share?
A man died in a village in Ireland, and someone asks his widow at the wake, what did he die of? Alcohol, she says. And why didn't someone advise him to go to AA? Oh, says the widow, he wasn't that bad.
Well, time, as usual, has caught up with us, so we'll just pass around the hat. Just to remind you again that there are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're entirely self-supporting through our own contributions. If everybody could put in an extra few pence, we'd be grateful as the rent of the hall's going up. Also, we've been asked to make a contribution towards the cost of the convention at Southend.
Wish I could take something out of it.
Christ almighty. I'm drunk. And I'm only here because the probation officer told me to come. I've never heard such a load of codswell up in my bleeding life. I've never seen such a bunch of creeping hypocrites. Give me jail any day, it smells better. Is this all you do? Is this all you do? Sit round here night after night, boring the bloody asses of each other? After he was asleep? Oh. Well, if you weren't, you bloody looped it. Well, he was. Christ, he still is. Hey, Jock! Prepare thyself for the second coming, mate. The Apostles is handing out tea and biscuits for free. Yeah. Where do you get all your money from, eh? That's what I'd like to know.
We are entirely self-financing through our own
Don't you give me all that. I'll tell you who's behind Alcoholics Anonymous. The CIA. Now, if they're not, they don't know their bloody job. An organisation of 1 million drunks all over the world. What a sitting target for blackmail and bribes, eh? Hey? You ask him there. You ask him to put his hand on your big book and swear he's not from the CIA. You know where I'm going now, don't you? You can guess. I'd soon have my pint and a chaser and a bit of bloody pride. Sit round here listening to you lot moaning away like a lot of old women in Grandma's front room on a wet Sunday. You know what I'll tell that probation officer? Go and sit there yourself, I'll say. Before you send the likes of me to disgrace myself in front of the middle classes. I'd sooner clean up slops. That's shit too, but it doesn't make the sign of the bloody cross.
You may have noticed some winos up the alley by the church. In pretty poor shape. Maybe he needs to go down that far before he comes back to us again.
So long as he doesn't leave it too late. It's when the brain goes. We've seen it happen. They lose the will to look for help. They're just picked up for fun.
CIA expenses.
I tried, he wouldn't come back.
Well, close, as usual, with the Serenity Prayer. Those who wish to do so may join in using the word God in the way that he or she understands it. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you very much. Right.
I'll see you.
I didn't know he was coming.
When people come to us, they tell us as much about themselves as they want to. We don't question them. You've told us a great deal about your husband we'd rather not have heard, unless it had come from him. I should think you'll find him in the Three Brewers, which is appropriately opposite.
It was too much for me.
This room's full of people who found life too much for them. How are you doing, Edith?
It's not easy, especially at night.
Well, it gets better.
Just try not drinking tonight. If you can't manage it, try not drinking for an hour. And tomorrow the same. If you can't manage a day at a time, try an hour at a time. And get to the meetings every day if you can. Here's the list. Tomorrow's Tuesday, so your nearest meeting will be Hammersmith or Barnes. Now, I'll give you my phone number. And you can ring me at any time. And here on the back, there's the central office number, and there's someone there from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week.
If I stop, is it after you stop you get the DTs as spiders, rats, horrors, all that?
Oh, yes, you may get them.
What do I do?
Sweat it out. For 72 hours at the worst. If it gets too bad, go to your local casualty department, tell them you're an alcoholic and you've got DTs. A young Muslim doctor's unlikely to have seen them.
Is there anything I can take?
No, not much. Lots of fluid, vitamin B. Ask Ronald, the treasurer. He's a pharmacist.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Take your time. I thought your talk was very good. Oh, good.
Can you make one for those?
Yes, thank you.
The trouble is that all non-alcoholic drinks are so terribly sweet and sickly. When I was drinking, I preferred a very dry white wine. Well, must be going. He'll be waiting. Good night.
Good night.
Come on, Suki. Quick, girl. Come on. Night, Kevin. Good night.
Hello.
I can't remember which meeting I've come to.
Nearest tube's Notting Hill Gate.
Ah,
Where do you live?
Belgraven.
Posh?
Port out, starboard home. I bet you don't know the origin of the word, Port cabin out, you see. Starboard home. Keeps you out of the sun both ways. Going to India and returning.
Were you in India?
Wasn't in India. Served in India. Royal Fusiliers, Temple Regiment, private. Major. Acting Lieutenant Colonel. Instant dispatches.
What do you do now?
I would tell you, if you promise not to tell anybody.
I promise.
I demonstrate.
What? On marches and things? Protests?
No. Must be mad. Do I look like a hairy? I demonstrate things.
What sort of thing?
Big stalls, exhibitions and so forth. Now they need somebody who can speak the King's English. No.
said he was a major in India.
Major? Sergeant Major. Coming again?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Keep coming. You know, especially in the first few weeks. Go to a meeting every night if you can.
I'm not sure that I'll have stopped.
But don't look ahead. Just take one day at a time, dear.
I've tried once before and I got the shakes.
Oh, we've all been through it. My bed used to rattle like a money box. It gets better.
Yeah. Good night.
Take care. Tom was right. It was wrong for Elizabeth to speak.
We're always learning. Oh, God, what she said. That was my sex life with Tom. For 8, 9 years. Till I was so far gone I stopped caring. You know, in all our meetings, all our works for the group, that's the one thing Tom and I have never talked about. What got me down was... Oh, it's so long ago it doesn't matter now. We were both just Commonwealth Garden members then. Still drinking. Off for a month and then on again and worse. Tom was having an affair with a girl in the group. Well, I suppose everybody knew about it except me. Did you know?
Yeah.
Took me a long time to forgive you all for not telling me. My only consolation was most of the time they must have been too pissed to do anything.
How is it now?
What?
Well, that. With Tom.
When we both stopped drinking, I mean really stopped for the last time, everything got better. Except that. We got in a muddle, trying to start again. Head up, I suppose. There are compensations.
What?
Sort of calm. Boredom. No, not really. Not if one works the programme.
What a lot of fuss we made about it, didn't we? That. You know, I've almost forgotten it now. And that's why I don't like porn. It reminds one.
Yes, off.
Yeah.
You'll never hear me now with all this noise.
Sorry, fellas. Well, good night, fellas.
And thank
Frank,
you.
see you again.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Good night, Frank.
All right, good night.
Thank
Bye.
Do you have another talk this week?
Yeah, I'm talking at Soho tomorrow night. I don't know what I'm going to say, but it always seems to come from somewhere.
Well, I'll say good night then.
Good night, Sean. Got somewhere to sleep?
I've always got somewhere.
Hey, Sean. Now wait for me. We need a handsome young man to walk me home.
Oh, yeah.
Good night, Mavis. Gavin. Tom.
There's always an Irishman.
And a Scotsman.
And a gentleman, or someone who thinks he is.
Yeah, I didn't know you were a Marxist.
Oh, I'm only a penguin fellow traveller.
Well, you go to meetings?
Yeah, tomorrow night. Stops one missing the boozer.
Good night, Gavin.
Oh, Tom. I had a slip last week.
Stupid bugger. What, at a party, was it?
Well, sort of. People know I don't drink, so they bring their own, and someone left a half bottle of scotch.
You had a drink since?
No.
Oh, well, jolly good. If you get any trouble, give us a ring.
Right, thanks. Good night, Tom.
Good night, Gavin.
Good night, Mavis.
Night.
Okay, then?
Yes. Frank said he owed his life to these rooms. We live in these bloody rooms, you and me.
Not now, for God's
Oh,
sake.
but that's it's always not now. Not now for a holiday, not now for talking. It was not now for having children. Not now, and then it's not ever.
What did you ask for 5 minutes ago? The serenity to accept the things you cannot change. Gas off?
Yes. I'm Mavis.
Check. Come in the Wimpy for a coffee.